Hummel, the Hummel Report. Question for Ms. Taylor, if you would.
Ms. Taylor, there's been a lot of discussion about getting votes of the legislature online, real time, no delay, as it is now. And so we're not quite sure how much that's going to cost. You'll get in there. Can you give me a date when, if and when you get elected, that you would foresee that happening? Would it be by the end of the session, or are we going to be futzing around a year from now saying, well, I got to do this and this and this, and I'm really sorry because that's something, but I didn't expect this? Have you done, because you talk about a lot, this about a lot, have you gone out and figured out what the mechanics for a timetable would be, so you can tell the voters by May 1st we're going to do this?
Sure. Now, it's important to keep in mind that there are two different components to this. One is the real-time reporting of voting, which does require the cooperation of the General Assembly. What I am talking about is having a searchable database of votes. We are the only citizens in the entire country who do not have the ability to type in the name of our state rep or state senator and an issue that matters to us, like car tax, find out how they vote, take that information into the voting booth on election day to cast a meaningful vote. That's the piece that I'm promising, and I'd like to get that in place certainly by, well, we won't have an election next year, but by the summertime, I would want to say. And I'd like to be able to get that information up on the Secretary of State's website so voters are able to weigh in. The other piece of it, I will work closely with the Assembly to get that going.
Mr. Secretary.
After 3 years of talking to the General Assembly about this, sponsoring or supporting a piece of legislation that was introduced by Chairman Pacheco, Representative Pacheco this year, I'm being told that both the House and the Senate are very well on the same page and that this is going to become reality in 2011. And when it does, we will immediately link it to our website. And when it does, I hope that when they have this press conference or unveiling or announcement that we're finally getting this done, that they will take note that the Secretary of State's office of the last 3 years has been fighting for this and hopefully explain to the people of Rhode Island that this has been something that's very important to me. So, Jim, my understanding is that it'll happen next year.
This is a perfect example of politics as usual, that we talk about something in an election year, but we pat the voters on the head and say, but it will happen after the election. It will be all right. The fact that we don't have a searchable format, it's basically just digitizing the contents of the Capitol Library. The fact that we don't means Mr. Mullis is defeatist in his attitude at best, or complicit with the secrecy of the General Assembly at worst.
Thanks, Ms. Taylor. Arlene Violet, a question for Secretary Mullis, please.
Mr. Mullis, very early in this debate, you referred to Ms. Taylor as a political insider of 20 years in Washington, D.C., no doubt in response to her accusations that you're a political insider. How do you feel, if at all, that the fact that she's had 20 years in Washington should somehow be used against her?
I think her 20 years in Washington should be used against her as much as my 20 years in Rhode Island should be used against me. It shouldn't be. Her experience is her experience. If the people have to know what we're made of. I've been in public service here in Rhode Island for 20 plus years, have enjoyed it, have been honored, and have made a difference. Catherine has been involved in Washington inside politics for 20 years. I'm sure she's enjoyed it, and she'll explain how she made a difference. I'll leave that to Catherine. But the end result is that if we're going to sit here and say, your 20 plus years here as an official in Rhode Island makes you a political insider, then I'm going to say I'm proud of those years. I'm proud of the accomplishments. Someday I'm going to sit back and look at our accomplishments and realize that we really made a difference for a state that I've called home all of my life, whether it's schools or senior centers or our voter ID in the future, whatever it may be, Eileen. But at the same time, if we're going to say that equals a political insider here in Rhode Island, and then I'm going to say that 20 years in Washington equals a political insider there in the Beltway.
Ms. Taylor, Operation Clean Government, which is a nonpartisan organization, frankly, has given Mr. Mullis one of the highest compliance records of all time. For example, relative to him making sure lobbyists have done the appropriate paperwork. They cited him with praise that 98% of lobbyists have, in fact, registered in the state, and he constantly is kept after them, et cetera. So it's all well and good for people to trade charges about being an insider, but you are technically an insider as well. So why is that issue even relevant? Why shouldn't we instead just not be focusing on what he has accomplished?
You're right. I am very proud of my service to the people of Rhode Island and government. I do want to point out that we need a little math lesson. I only lived in D.C. for 16 years, so much of my service to the Chaffees and the people of Rhode Island was here. And I am proud of that. But and I have found this now in the last couple of months, that there's an awfully big difference between working on issues in government, which is what I was doing, and doing some writing about issues, and participating as a politician. You know, there's
But what has he done wrong? I mean, you know, OPG doesn't pass out praises. I'm just
Sure.
saying that it's all well and good to talk about insiders, like he called you an insider, and
Right.
vice versa. But the fact of the matter is that Operation Clean Government, you know, thinks he's the next best thing since sliced bread. So what are you faulting him about that he hasn't done in the years that he's had as Secretary of State?
Well, he's talked a lot about things that he wants to do, and he's been completely ineffective on them. Time?
Don't,
No.
Okay.
don't things don't things have to have a process? You don't get it in your first year and your second year. You got to educate people.
Don't you think 4 years is long enough? I think you should have some accomplishments by 4 years. The one he has to show for himself is an appropriation for the master business application. It's just a pot of money with no specifics given to the General Assembly that hasn't benefited me as a business person at all. I haven't seen any change at all as for my work as a small business person in 4 years.
Mr. Secretary.
As far as accomplishments, I mean, I'm very proud of our accomplishments. It's more than just funding for a master business application. It's online initiatives in early 2007. It's we mean business workshops and expos in 2008, 9, and 10. It's an online form library, which we got awards for in 2010. And I can go on and on and on. It's a smooth election in 2008. It's information on lobbyists that were never there before in the last 3 years. You know, we have a lot to be proud of. Of course, we have to debate the issues, but I can say that there are a number of accomplishments that we have to look back on and say, you know, we've really done the work of the people for the last 4 years.
Ms. Taylor, how are you, a small businesswoman? How are you specifically going to cut the red tape for small businesses here in Rhode Island? Specifics, I mean, as much as possible in our format.
Absolutely. And when we say red tape, it's sort of a euphemism for the regulations that businesses have to face. And they come through the General Assembly. And one thing, as I said, I want to help businesses do is know what's coming down the pike so they can prepare. This is a really important thing, and I've talked when business people hear about it, they get very excited that someone is going to warn them. We have so many folks who are trying really hard to keep their head above water here, who suddenly find themselves with some fine for something they didn't even know was there. And there'll be another really important way for them to weigh in with the General Assembly too, as stuff is happening, as different changes are coming down the pike and as they're passed.
Mr. Secretary.
We worked very closely with small businesses. That's been a priority of ours. I mean, our online initiatives, our master business application, that's all the results. I mean, we're taking credit for the work we've done, but it's been done with partnerships. And we sat with chambers and we actually unveiled it to them before we unveiled it publicly because we wanted to know, hey, how does this not work? Are we helping you with this? What can we do differently? What we're going to do in the future, our master business application will be up and running in 2011. Phase 2 and Phase 3 need to get off the ground. What that is the elimination and consolidation of additional forms. Then taking this program, which we've modeled and put together, and bring it to 39 cities and towns and help them on a local level make it easier for businesses. Continue our partnership with EDC, have more workshops, continue our First Stop Center, and see if we can bring it a step forward and help them find funding. We can use our corporations divisions in ways to work with chambers, work with businesses, and help small business.
Everyone needs to be very clear that this master business application has not happened yet. Mr. Miles talks about it as an accomplishment. The accomplishment is an appropriation of $250,000. We have no master business application. That's a reality yet. And what everyone needs to know is there was a pilot program under Secretary Brown to test out the master business application for certain businesses that did not work out. And Secretary Miles, by his own admission in the newspaper, did not check that out personally. He relied on staff but did not provide the leadership to check out that pilot program to see what the lessons learned were from
I'm
that.
going to stop you there. Perhaps
Yes.
when you guys ask questions of each other, we can revisit that. Jim Hummel, question for Secretary Miles, please.
Mr. Secretary, I'm always amused by this insider-outsider. We have the candidates for governor. I mean, by the time you finish that, everybody's a political insider. So, you know, I'm an insider or I'm not. Quite frankly, I was a little shocked when you said on 10 News Conference that I'm not an insider. The fact is, over the last decade, you've contributed to Charlie Fogarty, Elizabeth Roberts, Chuck Moreau, David Cicilline, Mirth York, Peter Kilmartin, Gordon Fox, Joe Policina, Mr. Napolitano from Cranston, and as recently as last month, you've been attending fundraisers in North Providence, including making a $100 contribution to the newest elected Councilman Dino Audiello. So, putting all of that aside, insider or outsider, I think you say you want to get to the issues of trust in the office. When people look at the Secretary of State, they want to know, is he going to be an independent voice? And I understand we have a campaign finance system that you have to rely on contributions, but let me ask you directly. How many lobbyists have been cited in the last year, two, whatever you want to say, for nonconformance, and who are they?
Well, I can tell you that there's a double question there. So I'm going to answer the second question first. That way, you know, I came right out with it. Every single lobbyist who has non-conformed has been cited.
How many are there?
Well, I'd have to get back to you on that, Jim.
Well,
exactly how many?
You weren't ready for that?
I'll give you a handful.
Okay, a handful out of the thousands of lobbyists, and including some that make contributions to you.
So is it bad that 99% of the lobbyists are actually conforming to the law? I'm sorry that it's not sensationalized, that more on conforming. I'm sorry I can't give you the news that would actually make headlines. But the bottom line is 98% of them are conforming. And so those that aren't conforming, we're going after. And my answer as far as being a political insider, I don't see myself as a political insider, and I'll let you know why. The Democratic Party is against voter ID. I'm in favor of it. The Democratic Party is against the master lever. I'm in favor of it. I will be there for the people of Rhode Island. When I'm elected, I serve the people of Rhode Island. I have contributed to many elected officials. I believe in them. If that means I'm a political insider, I never realized that was a definition, but so be it. My definition of a political insider is someone who is inside the game and who is focused on the game itself. I'm outside. I'm representing the people of Rhode Island day in and day out, and that's my primary concern.
So for the record, your statement is that the vast majority of lobbyists are conforming to the letter, the spirit, and everything of the law, and that they're doing what they need to do up at the State House.
I would say, believe it or not, Jim, more than the vast majority. I believe the number, and I mean, I hate throwing numbers out there like this, but I believe the number was 98%, and that's one of the commendations of Operation Clean Government, that through our efforts, 98% of lobbyists are conforming.
Catherine Taylor.
You were asked over a month ago in this very station how many enforcement actions there had been taken, and you did not know then. You said you'd get back to Mr. DePietro. And a month later, you still don't know? This speaks to a shocking lack of engagement in the enforcement of lobbying activities.
Well, I can tell you there's not a shocking lack of engagement. We are out there. We are enforcing it. We've had hearings. We've sent letters. We've done at least as much, if not more, than prior Secretary of States have done. We're out there. Our goal is to make sure lobbyists conform. By us citing them, it may make us look good, but the Rhode Islanders don't get the information they need. What I want to do is get them to conform, get them to provide the people with the information. It may not get the headline that an elected official wants, but it gets the Rhode Islanders the information they need.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.